Ladies and gentlemen, today I have broken quantum mechanics as we know it. Before you clicked on this video, it had the potential to be either the world's greatest video known to mankind or the most pitiful excuse of a video that you've ever seen. But now that you've clicked it, you're either disappointed or pleasantly surprised by its mediocrity. Now it is you who is in the box. I am free. But hey, at least it's not another Schrodinger's cat video populating the internet. Wait. In today's humble opinion, we're scratching our heads in Nova-111. Nova-111 is what I would classify as a puzzle game, but what developer and publisher Funktronic Labs have proclaimed as a strategy. It's kind of funny because a lot of the time, the game itself doesn't really know what it wants to be. Combine that with the fact that it seems to have a lot of potential but never does anything with it, and it starts to sound a lot like a virtual representation of me. But let's back up for a moment. What the hell do I mean by the game doesn't know what it wants to be? Well, for starters, it's a turn-based game with real-time elements, which sounds interesting in theory, but in practice, the two step all over each other's toes like the participants of the Bigfoot Ball if they all had two left feet and issues with depth perception. I give the developers props for trying to innovate within the genre, but most of the time I find myself asking how having the real-time elements helps or even changes the gameplay experience, and the only conclusion that I can come to is the same answer I get when I ask myself why 2 + 2 = 22. It fucking doesn't. Granted, there are a few moments where you're forced to think on your feet rather than consider all of your options, but more often than not, the elements simply don't feel like they're impactful enough to warrant their mechanic. Oh, that monster drops little pellets when it leaves and they explode in place in real time. So what you're saying is that if I don't move at all after the thing moves, it'll just be like it doesn't even drop the pellets. Another set of conflicting mechanics are the fact that it grades you based on how many turns it takes you to complete the level, but hides most of its secrets and collectibles behind walls that you won't even know are there unless you smack into them and find out that they're passable. Each wall bump is counted as a move, so while they want you to explore, you're being punished for it. It's like being told to enjoy your weekend, but then also being assigned extra homework. Have fun, but not too much. Fuck off. Speaking of fun, this game is not. Like, at all. Did you know that in Spanish, Nova means it doesn't go? Fitting, because it just so happens that it feels like you're in the same fucking place forever. Each level is broken up into 3 stages that all look exactly the same, and there are quite a few levels to every location, which there are only apparently 4 of. Not that you'll get to see any of them, because I stopped recording at about 25% of the way through the game, and the scenery did not change before then. The game looks gorgeous, but at some point, I want to see other gorgeous things. It just gets monotonous really quickly. The only 2 things that are really there to break it up are the game's humor, which I can't really get into because it's spread thinner than my confidence when I'm lying alone in the darkness reliving all of my life's awkward social interactions, and new mechanics that it sprinkles throughout every level like a dump truck with Parkinson's. Call me a minimalist, but I'd rather see the puzzles that could be made with established mechanics for a while. The presentation of this game reminds me of dealing with a toddler asking you a bunch of questions that aren't particularly hard to answer, and we're not talking complex multi-layered questions like, is there supposed to be this much blood? But we're talking more like simple questions with definite answers almost immediately, like do you like squirrels, what sound do cats make, and why don't you have any friends? And they're coming at you in quick succession, and it doesn't seem to have any tangible coherence, which makes it feel hard, but not in the fun kind of way that makes you want to overcome it, just kind of like a chore. This game is normally on the Steam store for $8.99, which I just cannot recommend. It looks and feels like a Flash game that you could find on free on loads of websites, or maybe a cheap mobile game. But I understand that designing puzzles can take time, and there is clearly some love and thought that went into it, so I'd say somewhere around $5 would be reasonable. You can find it on sale for as low as $2.99 though, so I'd wait for that if you really want to give it a shot. And I wouldn't suggest picking it up unless you absolutely think that it looks or sounds like your shtick though. Gameplay for Nova-111 earns a 4.5 out of 10 because of its slow pacing, conflicting gameplay mechanics, and monotony. I wasn't even aware that there were bosses in the game until I encountered the first one a quarter of the way through. I didn't get footage of it though, so just imagine one of those beaked bastards, but a little bit bigger. If I had to take a guess, I'd say that this game was a highly experimental title by a passionate group of people who are getting their feet wet in game design. The visuals are captivating, but the rest of the game is so all over the place that it becomes a fuzzy blur, and it doesn't manage to hold your interest for too long. It manages to make everything feel exactly exactly the same despite its attempt at spastic mechanical diversity. In general, it's just not particularly fun. It's not awful, but it wouldn't be my go-to game if there were other titles that were available. For value, I'm willing to be slightly more lenient with a 5 out of 10. As I said before, it's not an awful title, and definitely not so much so that it deserves a score that could potentially drop the bundle's value below average. It's alright. Plus, it tries some new things that might be worth exploring and experiencing if you're passionate about games as a medium and are interested in seeing the attempts at experimentation and innovation. It's an alright game at worst, and a palate broadener at best, which rounds the bundle out just a little bit. With an average of 4.75 out of 10, Nova-111 scores a C-, which is okay, but nothing to write home about. Not a disappointment for the open-minded.